everybody, Josh Rappaport here with Now I Get It Math. Today I'd like to present algebra mistake number 5. And this is the mistake that occurs when students are dealing with a negative number and a positive number that are combined. And students often think that the answer to any problem like this is automatically negative. So in a case like this, negative 2 plus 7, students might think that the answer is negative 5. Okay, let's try to understand why students might have this misunderstanding. Students often hear in class that a positive number combined with a negative make a negative. And students hear this because it's true in the case of 3 separate rules. So what are those rules? First of all, you've got the multiplication rule, which says that when you multiply a negative number and a positive number, you always get a negative number. So negative 2 times positive 7, for example, would be negative 14. Similarly, the division rule says that when you divide a positive number by a negative or a negative by a positive, you always get a negative number as well. So positive 14 divided by negative 2 would be negative 7. Similarly, negative 14 divided by positive 2 would also be negative 7. And then finally, the neighbor sign rule, a third rule, says that when you've got 2 signs that are next door neighbors to each other, like these two, a positive next to a negative, they always turn into a negative sign. So again, a positive and a negative make a negative. They make a negative sign. So you get 7 plus negative 2 turns into 7 minus 2, which is, of course, just 5. All right. So we've got these 3 rules that tell us that a positive and a negative make a negative. But in this case, that's not necessarily true. Notice I say not necessarily. The reason I say that is that actually about 50% of the time, you wind up with a negative answer here. The other 50% of the time, you wind up with a positive answer here. It all depends on which number is larger, the positive number or the negative number, as I'll explain in just a moment here. Okay, because the true way to see this has to do with how we view the positive number and the negative number. In the previous video, algebra mistake number 4, I mentioned that you can view a negative number as being like a debt, like money that you owe somebody. So to take that to its logical extension, you could think of a positive number as representing money that you have, an asset. So in that respect, what this problem represents is a combination of money you have and money you owe. And what you're getting for your answer is the result of how you wind up after you pay off your debt, at least in part. Okay, so here's how it works in general, and then I'll give some examples that will show how it works specifically. So in general, if your positive number is greater than your negative number, it means that the amount of money you have is greater than the amount of money you owe. And of course, whenever that's the case, you wind up having money, so your answer will end up being positive. But on the other hand, if the amount of money you owe, if the negative number is greater than the positive number, that means the amount of money you owe is greater than the amount of money you have. And in that case, since you owe more than you have, you're going to wind up still owing money, so your answer is going to be negative. All right? Now let's look at some examples that show how this works specifically. All right, so a first example would be negative 7 plus 2, kind of the flip of this problem right here. So here's an important point. When you see a problem like negative 7 plus 2, or any problem like this with a positive and a negative, it's very helpful to break those two integers apart. View it as 2 separate integers. So we're going to view this as a negative 7 and a positive 2. Okay, that way you can think that the negative 7 tells us that we owe $7. The positive 2 tells us that we have $2. Then that way you can see what's larger, what we have or what we owe. Obviously, since 7 is greater than 2, we owe more than what we have. So it goes that way. So the answer, since we owe more, the answer is going to be negative. And then to think about the situation to get the actual numerical value of the answer, you just think about it. So you say, okay, you owe $7, you have $2. What do? Well, you pay the person the $2 that you have, but you still owe some money. How much do you owe? Well, you can just think it out like this. Here's the 7 that you owe, but you've paid off 2 now, so you owe 5 still. So the answer is going to be negative because we owe, and it will be 5 because we still owe 5. So it's negative 5. So that's basically how it works. Okay, let's do the same basic procedure, but for a problem that's a little bit different. In fact, this problem, negative 2 plus 7. All right, again, we're going to break it up into 2 integers. We're going to view it as negative 2 and positive 7. And we're going to view that negative 2 as telling us that we owe $2. The positive 7 says we have $7. So this time, things are looking a little better financially, right? So the amount we owe is 2. The amount we have is 7. So what's more, the amount we owe or the amount we have? This time, the amount that we have is greater. Since we have more than we owe, we're going to wind up having some money left over. Yay! So the answer is going to be positive. Okay, so this time it's going to be positive. Again, when we think it out, we just subtract. But here's how we think it out this time. Well, we have $7. We owe $2. So here's the 7 we have. We owe 2. We're going to pay off the 2. We're going to be left with 5. It's still 5, but this time it's $5 that we have. So the answer is going to be positive 5. Okay? So basically, the process is a two-step process. You first figure out if the answer is positive or negative by determining if you have more than you owe or if you owe more than you have. And secondly, you just subtract the smaller number from the larger number. When I say number, I mean just the pure number. You could say the absolute value of the number or the plain number. Like you'd subtract the 2 from the 7, not the negative 2 from the positive 7, just the 2 from the 7 to find out the numerical value of the answer. And you put the sign right just to the left of that number, and that's your answer. Sign, number, bingo, there's your answer. So that's all there is to it. And I'm going to put up, as usual, some resources that show you some places where you can get additional info on how to do problems like this, along with quite a lot of practice problems. But I'll also put up a short list of practice problems right after the video, as always, so you can test your hand at doing these problems right now and get your skills better at it. So I hope that helps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.